Hello, Dr. Wiggins. Welcome to Group 2, Post 5 discussion. We will start by talking about connections between precious knowledge and our community assets map.
I wrote something about it, but what I was really interested in, I don't know who talked about it, but the connection between the politician and the community assets map. It was talking about how obviously he didn't understand what was happening within the classroom and that learning about culture and how.
Oh, that was me.
Yeah. Okay. I was and then the community
yeah, so I just said so I was thinking about the community assets map, how I related it to precious knowledge was the concept of EMIC versus EDIC study that Dr. Wiggins talked about in the PowerPoint, and how that if we walk around the neighborhood in Alderwood Elementary, and decide what that community needs, and that would be coming at it from an outsider EMIC perspective, which would be just what the politicians not on board did. They decided what the school needed and what the kids needed without really asking anybody within the school. So that for me, it informed me about the community assets map, that we need to make sure that we're listening to community members and seeing what they think they need and what their strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah, I like that connection. Yeah, I just talked about how doing a community assets map, you see what the community does have, and it shouldn't be seen as lacking. Those are the assets that can be used to help them, and oftentimes they're underutilized or not even known about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I highlighted that you said that they're underutilized, because a lot of communities have services that people just don't know about, and that's part of the connection that needs to be made. Because if people don't know about it, then it's not really a resource.
Yeah. And schools are in a good place to connect families to resources that are helpful to them.
I think so. I think a lot of it has to do with not knowing about the things around us, and I think that connects to just life in general. A lot of times there's a lot of resources that people don't know about, whether it's on campus, here, there's so many resources that are underutilized. So I think the community assets map helps highlight that, and what can you do to actually show people that yes, we do have something for you, let us show you. Or if that's with someone who doesn't speak English, how do you express that? And so I like what you're saying about how there's these things that communities have and maybe things that they need, but the things that they have, are they actually known about? And yeah, that's cool.
I think one thing I also said, that if there's a community center or a church or places around nearby also that people might not know about, that will kind of show us how the community could be formed from those things, because if it didn't have those things, then it might not have certain structures and places where people could go.
Yeah, and I think as a teacher coming into a new community, doing a community assets map can be helpful to realize where people might gather and what's important to them because what's around.
They tell, I've been in classes where they talk about get to know where your students come from, or how they live everyday life, because that can look a lot different, and I've read articles on it and stuff. And one of the people that I work with, she's doing her student teaching in Mount Vernon right now, and they did a field trip to the fields, I guess. I don't know where. I can't remember what it is exactly, but she went and she learned about where what's the hot topics for this community and what people are dealing with, because she's 70% free and reduced lunch at school, at her school. It's free and reduced lunch is 70%, and so learning about those students and where they come from too is just.
Yeah, and I think Precious Knowledge brought that in to the classroom by talking about where these children are coming from and their culture and their heritage and values of their ancestors that they might not even know about anymore, but still have this connection to because it reflects their daily life.
Yeah.
I forgot to turn on my recording, so now we have that.
I hope you can hear us over the talking over there. I apologize.
And Emma, like you said, that that this is probably something that we should do as future teachers. Is like I know working at Planned Parenthood that I've had a teacher call and say, you know, I work at this high school and our school nurse is telling girls that they shouldn't get IUDs, and I don't think that's right. Can I give them your guys' phone number? And I'm like, it was really cool that teacher did that. She was a little overzealous and saying some things that weren't right, but so I was trying to steer her clear of that. But I was like, yeah, just, you know, give her our number and write our number on the whiteboard and just leave it there. We have like community outreach teen council that goes out into schools, and then they just leave the number, our phone number, on the whiteboard all year, and you know, just to, you know, that's for high schoolers, they're going to need that, and you know, for us in early childhood, you know, we're probably leaning more towards like working towards what the parent needs are, so like having, you know, DV SAS number handy, and food bank, the location of the food bank, just working at a Planned Parenthood, people come in and just ask us all, like, where's the food bank, or do you know where the needle exchange is, or just all this stuff that we, I never thought of it that way before, but yeah, working there, I need to know the community assets of what our clientele needs.
Cool.
Not all of them need needle exchanges though.
So I guess the next article is the Vygotsky article, and talking about that. Oh, I guess A and B did the same thing. Who else is it? Who's A?
Me.
Oh.
But mine's a little different. My question is drawing on examples from the other article and my own life experiences to illustrate Vygotsky's ideas. Like, I have to explain how that broader social context plays out in the lives of individuals. I'm trying to talk really.
Okay,
anyway, so he thinks that like all learning occurs in a social context, which I totally agree with, because how you like grow up. You gave an example of like you grew up in a Christian Science background, and that is just what you view things as through that perspective. And so I just talked about how I grew up in a Christian home and how my family like supported me in those things and like took me to church, and so now that's like a regular part of my life, and that really shaped who I was as a person and how I see the world and see different things. And so yeah, I thought that was good. And I also talked about this video that I watched in my health class called Unnatural Causes, and we had to watch like this hour-long movie that talked about 4 different people and like where they lived, and like they each lived in different districts, and it was kind of crazy to learn that if you were poor, like if you had a low socioeconomic status, there was more likely that you were going to get like really sick, and like you had a lesser life expectancy. And then someone who was like a CEO and lived in a like rich neighborhood, he would have like a greater expectancy because based on like off education, how much education you receive. So I thought that was really interesting to see the correlation between just like your social context and how you grow up and how that affects your future and stuff.
Yeah. I had B, which talked about explain the role social interaction plays in learning and identity development, and how like Vygotsky talked about learning occurring between people before becoming internalized. And what I got from it was like Vygotsky talks about like social interactions, like Lisa was saying, that like a lot of learning comes from these social interactions, and for a child to internalize something, they like hear it and then internalize it. So I was kind of like, I don't know if this is exactly right, but I was thinking of like a kid learning what like a spoon is. So like they see the spoon, we say like, this is a spoon, like you eat with this, and the kid doesn't necessarily say it out loud, but like hears that, and then they like have interactions with that spoon, and then they can internalize this is a spoon, and that's kind of how it works. And so I was thinking like in the classroom, it could be like a kid does something like, again, that's like not okay, and like so they have to go sit out in the hallway, and you say like, that wasn't okay, this is a rule that you broke, and then the kid like hears it but maybe doesn't say it, and then like they have that interaction of like sitting out in the hallway and not being able to be a part of class, and then they like internalize like that kind of thing, or like I don't know, I feel like it can kind of
I like this like the spoon example that
Yeah.
you gave, because I thought that was interesting in the Vygotsky article too, that I never really thought of it, that it what did he say, that it's an interaction before an internalization, like you said, and that wasn't really how I thought about things, but yeah, a child doesn't learn the word spoon without any context.
like they don't come out like knowing, like we don't come out knowing like you're my mom, like someone says that like, hi, I'm your mom, you know, like that kind of thing. I don't know. That's kind of what I got from it.
Yeah.
Which I thought was
I
interesting.
thought that was a good example.
Yeah. And then another important idea that Vygotsky was talking about was like when a child makes mistakes and learning from their mistakes. So, like, I don't know, you touch a hot stove and then you're like, ow, that was hot. And then you internalize it, like, I will not touch this hot stove because it's hot and it hurts. And like how much you can learn from that like interaction of mistakes within like.
And I think you can kind of see how important that type of learning is when like you tell a child not to do something and they do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because they just have to test it.
And then they do it and then they get sent in the hallway and then they're like, oh, maybe I should, well, that's the home thing, or like, maybe not get sent out in the hallway, maybe have to like sit down and write more than other people.
We were in a class last quarter about, a book that we read was called Shoe and Meter, and it was about children learning how to measure things, and they like literally use a shoe to measure at first, and then they finally come to the realization like, oh, we should use a meter stick. And I think Vygotsky called them like misconceptions in that book. And it was really interesting how much they talked about, or where the fine line that you're supposed to draw if a child says or does something that you know is wrong, or not necessarily does something that you know is wrong, but like an example that I really liked in the book was that a child and an adult are both like shoveling, they're both using shovels down a ramp, and the adult's ramp is at more of an incline or something, and so their sand is like going down the ramp, and the child is like, oh, mine's not doing that. Well, that's because their ramp isn't at an incline, but their misconception is that like, oh, it must be the shovel. It must be my shovel. And so they're like, will you trade me shovels? And so the teacher, instead of saying like, well, it's actually not the shovel that's the variable that you need to change, it's the incline of your ramp, you know? Then the teacher, you know, lets that child explore that misconception. So it's like in the exploration of the misconception that the learning occurs. So I really like that. That concept.
Okay, I had what is the zone of proximal development? And so the zone of proximal development is the level of achievement that a child can do by themselves. And their zone is what they can reach with support and help. And so for teaching, we need to be in that zone of proximal development to help get them to the next level without frustrating them. And so to do that, we use scaffolding, which you've all probably heard of. And so to scaffold, you might ask open-ended questions that don't give the child the answer, but maybe lead them on the right path. Like in that example, the teacher might have said, what is the shovel doing to help the sand go down? Or like, why isn't the sand going down the ramp?
It's like the science ed classes. Have you guys taken the science ed classes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like never answered, but it's like all these questions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the teacher can teach students through modeling and doing it in or herself. And then using pre-made projects or models, which I've heard mixed reviews on whether to do or not. Because
To do what?
using models of projects you want students to
Oh.
do, because it might limit their creativity, but it also might give them a direction and a place to start.
It probably depends on the goal that you're trying to reach.
Yeah.
My part of the Vygotsky article was how language plays a central role in learning, and then it also connected with the Pitahan tribe and how their language influenced their thinking and ways of interacting, which was fascinating. So
The PETA,
that was how the tribe, the Piraha, the Piraha.
Oh, in the next article?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it's pronounced.
So I was reading it like Pagon or something.
Oh yeah, there was one at one point, and I like put it in several spots in here how to pronounce it, so I wouldn't
Okay.
pronounce it wrong. There was one point in the article where it said how to pronounce it, and
Gotcha.
it said Pitahan.
Okay.
Or Pitahan, like Han is where the infant. Anywho, so let's see. Oh yeah, so I hadn't heard this about Vygotsky before, really, about how important he saw language as a tool of the mind. And we know that he thinks interactions are really important, and so yeah, I guess obviously you would need language for that. And let's see, and then just how important language, through the written word or speech is required for the transmission of a lot of knowledge, or through books, and without that, then that would really limit critical thinking. The way I connected that with the tribe was that their culture shapes their language and vice versa. And my example of that was they didn't have the future tense,
Yeah.
so they didn't plan for the future, so that they didn't. They said that they didn't stock up on food supplies, and because they really had to live in the present ethos, and that really showed itself, whether it showed itself in the language first, and then that influenced the culture, or
That's interesting to think about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Those were fascinating.
Oh yeah, it was super interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just I was really proud of myself that I made a connection somehow to literally ELL teaching, that when they tried to teach them how to count in Portuguese, that they, and correct me if I'm wrong, they really couldn't learn to count.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have that in their primary language, or in their L1, or in their culture. And so that just made me think that we need to be aware of that as teachers. How can somebody learn something, and how can we teach something in a second language that's not even applicable
Right.
to somebody's first language or their first culture?
Yeah. One thing I was wondering was about how they don't have set terms for colors.
Yeah.
But in English, we're missing words that exist in other languages, for feelings and stuff, but we still can express those feelings
Yeah.
using multiple words. So I'm wondering if they still understand the concept of color,
Yeah.
but use multiple words to describe it, not just red or
Mhm.
blue. But like they did say like the color that our berry that we pick is,
Mm.
which is multiple words, but they understand that that's the same.
But there is a color.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just didn't have a fixed set of it. Yeah. Or you think of all those, I think in German they have like a lot of like the word for when you get gum stuck on your shoe and it's an accident or
Yeah.
something. You know how they have, they just, and
Like describe it.
Yeah.
yeah, but and they have, one word for that, and, yeah, like you said, it's not like it's a deficit in our language that we don't have that word. I mean, sometimes we wish we had a word for that, but for the most part, we're doing okay.
And other languages have multiple terms for love, different types of love, whereas we like say a friendly love or like romantic love.
Or I love pizza.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
a like love.
Hmm. Yeah. I had E. Was that for the first article stuff?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, mine was supposed to connect the two.
Oh, okay. So I had E, and it was pretty much talking about like Vygotsky and how like I don't know the article and like the current status of the U.S. educational system and the citizenship status stuff. And I feel like that's something that we've like talked about a lot in these articles is like how much one thing can connect to another, and like documentation status has like really big effects. And I think this one's just more like connecting the language part of it and how like if you're undocumented and your family doesn't speak English and then you don't have those interactions with English like other people have, then it affects like the students' like ability to learn learn those languages. But then like if they stopped speaking like Spanish altogether or like whatever language, then like how do they continue to learn that and kind of those effects. I thought it was kind of hard because like I feel like that's like really big because there's like the educational system's like giant, and then like documentation status is giant, and then like language is huge. And so like are they interconnected? I think they're like all interconnected in a lot of different ways. And I wrote this a long time ago, but yeah, I think just like connecting that like it's all interconnected. And so like if someone does documentation status is like yep, sorry, that was a lot of rambling. But yeah, like how language and documentation status and family all connect together, I guess. Sorry.
And
I
that
think-
affects learning. We follow.
Yeah. Sorry.
Everyone's situation is a unique blend of all of those factors.
Yeah. And yep. So pretty much I just talked about how all that has to affect each other.
The next article is the interpreter has a remote Amazonian tribe upended our understanding of language. And my question was, what are the distinguishing characteristics of the, how do you say it?
Pirahan.
Pirahan language.
Pirahan.
And how does Evra explain these differences? And we kind of already mentioned some of the differences, like they don't have words for